The more you use any camera system, the more you become familiar with its quirks, its oddities, and optimizations that you can make to help you out to shoot more effectively. Here I have the Lumix cameras, the GH5, the GH6, and the G9 Mark II, and I've always been on this quest to find the all-day battery life, basically infinite battery, so I never have to change the actual battery within the camera. On the GH5, you have a normal opening door here, like you would on most DSLRs or mirrorless style cameras. And on the side, you have USB-C. But unfortunately, on the GH5, this USB-C does not charge the battery. So you have to constantly switch this battery in and out, in and out, in and out all day. And to adjust for that and to fix that problem, I ended up getting what is called a dummy battery. Basically, it's not a battery at all. It's just an adapter that you can pop in to the door. And because it has this little notch here, you can slide the cable right there, close it up, lock it. Now I don't have power, but I can hook it up to any other external battery source like these Anton Bauer Titan bases. Now, if I plug this into the Anton Bauer, and there is a direction that matters, I can mount this under the camera, and now I can power the GH5 basically all day. The other advantage to using a battery like this instead of relying on the internal batteries is this can power more than just the camera. So I can power a monitor off of this battery and all sorts of stuff. I could even charge something off the USB if I wanted to. And that way I've got a huge, huge battery inside a GH5. But there is one problem. You see, if this P-tap or D-tap, whatever you call it, if this gets loose or comes unplugged, that's a critical power failure, meaning if you're recording and you accidentally bump that and you lose power, the clip gets corrupted. It would be just the same as if you pulled the battery out of the camera while you were recording. Usually on the camera, if you get low battery and the camera shuts itself off, it will save the clip. But if you just pull the power, the camera doesn't know what you're doing and it all of a sudden just corrupts the recording. So that is one issue with this type of setup. But as long as you're aware of the risk, it's something that can be mitigated. So when I got the GH6, I thought I would do something similar. I would get a dummy battery, and because the GH6 changed the battery style from the BLF 19, which is what the GH5 uses, the GH6 uses the BLK 22 style battery, which basically has these extra spots on top. So I got the same dummy battery thinking I could do a similar setup, but here's the quirk with the GH6. They changed the style of the battery port, meaning instead of having a notch where the cord can go to the side, they expect you to run the cord through this hole. Now, if you're looking at this adapter, you should see a problem with that. Both ends are too big for that hole to fit through, and there's no way to undo this connector. So I bought this, and it basically was worthless. However, I did find a better solution, bringing in USB. Now, because these Anton Bauer Titan bases have USB out, you can plug USB here, and you've got USB-C, which thankfully on the GH6 actually allows charging. So you can run USB-C into the side of the GH6 and charge your battery that you have inside. This is a lot safer and a lot nicer because now, even if I unplug the USB, it doesn't matter. There's still a battery inside. You're never going to have a critical power failure. You're always going to be able to save that clip. Even if your battery gets low, you're never taking the battery out. You're never losing power immediately, so you can always save your clips and there won't be any issue of corruption. It's basically impossible for it to happen compared to the dummy battery setup, which exposes you a little bit to that risk. Now, if you make sure it doesn't come unplugged, it's not a problem, but it is a whole lot safer to rely on the USB charging. However, the GH6 has a little bit of a quirk in that when it's powered on, when you're recording, the USB power is not enough to keep the battery fully charged. It will trickle, but it won't actually maintain the battery at max capacity. It will slowly come down as you're filming throughout the day. But for the most part, it gives you all day battery life on the GH6 if you power off the USB-C. Now, there might be dummy batteries that allow you to disconnect and reconnect and you can thread it through this hole, but I just find this such a terrible design. The notches that we've always had for power on almost all of these doors over the years, meaning the notch for the cable, like on the GH5 here, this notch just works so great, and I don't know why they got rid of it for the GH6. So when moving to the G9 Mark II, I expected to use the same tactic. I would use my USB-C because I can charge off the USB port here on the side on the G9 Mark II. I can charge the battery here. I can plug in to the Anton Bauer Titan base on the other end and keep that internal battery charged all day. However, here's the problem with the G9 Mark II. That charging while your camera is on, while it's recording, doesn't work basically at all, as far as I can tell. It can see that there's power coming in, but it doesn't maintain the charge like it does on the GH6. It actually drains that battery much, much quicker, and the only way to actually charge that internal battery to any extent that I found is by turning the camera off, which, yeah, you can do, but it's quite annoying if you want to keep filming and have battery to do so. This method does not work. So now I'm left to going back to my old methods, bringing these back out of storage and running a dummy battery back to the inside of the G9 Mark II. Thankfully though, they've reincorporated the notch design for the cord. So the dummy battery goes in, you can close that door, lock it, and now I actually have a use for this cord that I've been hanging on to for the past 2 or 3 years, and I finally can use it on the G9 to power it with a dummy battery. But again, you run that risk of losing power if this ever comes unplugged, loosened, bumped. You know, if that comes undone and you're recording, you're gonna corrupt the clip. So it's all things to be well aware of as you're designing what power system works best for you. Maybe you like switching batteries, and that's fine. These batteries are relatively affordable. You can get a couple of them to make your life easier, and you just charge them and you swap them as the day goes by. But I always find it so frustrating and so tedious when I'm on a shoot and the battery gets low and I have to go pause everything. Let's go switch a battery. Yes, you can do it in the downtime. You can do it when you're having lunch or whatever, when there's a moment to take a little breather. But I just like the peace of mind of just knowing I've got power all day long. It's really nice. These Anton Bauer batteries are way more capacity than these tiny little internal batteries. So it makes a lot of sense to me to use something like that. I mount it underneath the camera, keep it nice and stable, give a little bit of extra weight, and plus I can power my monitor on top of the camera, all with one battery. I find the advantage to be extreme, and I really prefer that style of shooting, but it's taken a lot of ins and outs to understand the quirks of each of these cameras, what type of power they need, why they need it, and to really understand that just because you assume one thing's going to work for one camera is not necessarily going to work for the other. Thankfully, the flexibility on these, having a variety of ports and different styles of power, makes the job a lot easier, and that way the battery doesn't have to stick with one camera. I can use it throughout my system depending on what I need to do. Overall, I'm happy that they brought the notch style battery door back on the G9 Mark II, but I really wished they got this USB power supply on the side working a lot better. I don't know why this is an issue. I know some Sony cameras, you can power the camera right off USB. It would be such a nice thing to be able to power this off USB. And maybe it's a firmware update. Maybe there's a fix coming. I sure hope. If Lumix is watching this, please allow me to power this camera via USB. In a perfect world, I would have the battery inside, USB in, keeping everything charged throughout the day, full maximum capacity, so I can actually fulfill that goal and that dream of infinite or near infinite or all day battery life, because I'm fine to switch a battery if I have to, but I would really prefer to use a system that can power me through an entire day. I think that's the ideal. It can work to varying degrees with the different mixes, but they all have a little bit of a gotcha, a little bit of a hurdle that you have to overcome if you want to make it actually work. So invest in some dummy batteries, invest in some USB cords, invest in some extra external batteries. It doesn't have to be these Anton Bauer ones. You could do it with any battery power pack if you want to run the USB model, because that's just whatever USB power supply you have. But if you want to do the P-tap, D-tap power as well, I really recommend something like these Titan bases. They work great for me. They're kind of expensive. There are some other brands that work just as well. The design is just a little bit stranger shaped. I've found other ones that are a little bit thicker, like this brand. This is the power base from Edge, I think. I found this on Amazon, and it does have a V-mount option back here, but I just don't like this. It's a little bit bigger, it's a little bit bulkier. I don't have quite the same outputs. It's got 2 USBs and then 2 P-taps. It works, it's fine, but my preference is certainly for these Titan bases. They're just a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and just a little bit more sleek, a little bit more low profile, and I happen to like them a bit better. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear it. Do you have a good solution for charging your camera all day long? Let me know in the comments.